are we ready? Everybody got their notes up? Okay, so this is kind of putting everything together. I'm just finding the solutions. Finding the solutions means what? Setting it equal to 0 and solving. Yes? Huh? What do you mean 36? Oh, put an X there. Thanks. I had no idea what you were talking about, Kuja. No. All right, so here we go. So now what we need to do is follow the steps. If you want to solve, you can't solve until you factor. And if you're going to factor, the first question you always ask yourself is, can you pull anything out? And in this question, the answer is, so we don't lose, we never divide through, okay? So we can do a 4x, perfect. We never divide through by a variable, okay? It eliminates a solution. We just pull it out. We can divide through by numbers when it's set equal to 0, but not by a variable. Well, this leaves me with x to the 4th minus 10x to the plus, okay. So we still need to finish factoring. So we carry down the 4x, and we need to factor. We can use the box method here, correct? Because we just did this with Ellen. So here what we're going to put here is x to the 4th, and here we put a 9. And we say, what are our factors of 9 that give me negative 10? We're doing the same thing. Final, what's the product that gives me our last term, but the sum that gives me my middle? Negative what? Good. So we're going to put negative 1x to the what? Second. And over here we'll put negative 9x to the second, right? And so we do it the same way. I can pull out a negative 1 here, an x squared here, an x squared here, and a negative 9. So now we fill in and we say that means I have x squared minus 1 and x squared minus 9. So anytime I have in any parentheses, or if I pull anything out, anytime there's a variable in there, we set that portion or that factor equal to 0, correct? So then that means we're going to say let 4x equal 0, which means x is equal to, there's 1. Let x squared minus 1 equal 0, which means x squared is equal to 1, which means x is equal to, careful, plus and minus 1, because I'm going to take the square root, and in an equation, I get a positive and a negative. So here's 2 more solutions. And then the last one says x squared minus 9 equals 0, which means x squared is equal to 9, which means x is equal to, so, because I'm setting this equal to 0, this factor equal to 0, that factor equal to 0.
I have a question though. How come you made, you had 4x and you had the parentheses. Why was it x squared again?
It was, well, when I pulled out the 4x, it was x to the 4th minus 10x squared plus 9. Okay? So, because I need middle terms with squareds. If this was squared and this was first, then we would be putting just x's in these spots. Yeah. Okay. Better? Okay. Okay. What do we call x squared minus 1? It's a difference, a perfect square. Could I have factored that further? What would I have gotten? And look, I'm still going to get the same answers, right? And is x squared minus 9 a perfect square? And what would I have gotten as my solutions? Oh. So I've got 2 routes. If I've got a perfect square, great. You can either factor it out further or set them up as, you know, your factors equal to 0, remembering that you get, when you take the square root, a positive and a negative answer. Okay, can we move on? All right, let's do the next one. Here I have, what do I have to do? So, if we are going to solve, it has to be set equal to 0. So we're going to make this 2x to the 5th minus 14x cubed plus 24x equals 0. And we always, always, always write our exponents in descending form. Okay? And the question that we ask ourselves is, can I? And the answer is, I can pull out a 2x, sure, and be left with x to the 4th minus 7x squared plus 12 equals 0. Well, I'm not pulling out a negative value, I'm pulling out a positive. Okay. All right, so we're going to do our little box again. And we'll put x to the 4th and 12. And we say, what are our factors of 12? That give me negative 7. Negative 3 and negative 4. So I put negative 3x to the 2nd and negative 4x to the 2nd, right? Are we comfortable with that it's x squared in this case? Okay. Pulling up, I can pull out a negative 3. I can pull out an x squared. Pulling across, I can pull out a x squared and a. So my factors still remain the 2x that we pulled out, correct? And now I'm left with x squared minus 4 and x squared minus 3. Set it equal to 0. Don't drop the fact that we're solving. So that means that 2x is equal to 0, which means x is equal to 0. X squared minus 4 equals 0, which means x squared is equal to 4, or x is equal to. And then x squared minus 3 equals 0, so x squared is equal to 3, so x is equal to? Exactly. Square roots are A-okay. Yeah, because my solutions, it's asking you to solve. Because what am I asking you to do? Find the real solutions. If I wanted to graph this one, for argument's sake, where would the graph cross the x-axis? At, and negative 2, and plus or minus root 3. So let's say for argument's sake we know that. It crosses at 0, at negative 2, at positive 2, and I think the square root of 3 positive and negative is like right here. It would be winding. And what would your y-intercept be? What would the y-intercept be? No. The y-intercept is when x is 0. 0. So that means we know that the y-intercept, which was the same as one of your x-intercepts. Now, it's a cubic or fifth root. Where are your tails? Fifth root, odd. Even goes up or down. Odds are at odd points, okay? Now, what was the highest exponent of this polynomial? It was a 5. So that's odd. So if we had to sketch this, we would go woo, 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 woo. Tails end up in the right spot, and we know where it's crossing the x-axis. You might. Are you graphing in your homework? No. But we'll be doing this, huh? There can be multiple lumps. Absolutely. No, there can be multiple lumps. All right, you try this one yourself. And would you like your first term to be positive or negative? I would. Absolutely. So remember, the box says, after you put your first term, right, and your last term, 2 times -5, you multiply it, and it has to add to -9. The product of the first and the last has to add to the middle. Because it's the first and the last. You have to multiply the first and... No, no, no. Correct, because I'm down to just x squared and x. Don't forget, when you pulled something out, that it's got to come down as part of your work. Because aren't the product, what's the product of -10 that gives me -9? No. You multiply first and last, and it has to add to the middle. See, look. Here, we wanted to multiply to get -12 and add to get -7. This just happened to be a 1. You sure? Okay, so do I need to factor this any further? No. But we need to solve, right? So what are my values for x? X can equal, and x can equal. Okay, for argument purposes, let's graph this. 0, -1/2, 5, because it's always nice to know why we're doing this, okay? And again, if this was set equal to y instead of 0, what would the exponent be? The exponent. What's the highest exponent? So that means if you body graph this, it is going up, okay? What happened at 0, though? So this is clear, but 3x squared equals 0, right? X squared is equal to 0, which x is a positive and negative 0, but the 0 is neither positive nor negative, right? But would you agree that maybe my answer is 0, 0, that I'm getting 0 twice? Would you agree? Okay. So if I want my tails to be in the second and the first quadrant, and if I follow the thought process, it has to come down through this one. If it goes up, then we're going to go down, and our tail ends up in the wrong region. Would you agree? Well, no. We know what our x's are. These are our values. So what do you think is going to happen at 0? It glitches and goes back down, and then goes up. So it bumps. The fact that this happened 2 times is always a bump. It's not a pull through. It touches it, but goes back down. So that we get our tails going in the right areas. Which is why you need to know where these tails are going to end. Always and forever. They follow that pattern. So the questions on your homework, some say just to factor. Then all you would do is leave it in factored form. Some will say to solve, and then you would give me what x is equal to. You will need to look up some volume formulas, because they're going to have you do volumes. Okay, so just look them up on Google. Google up what some of the volume formulas would be. Cone or pyramid or something like that. Okay, and anytime you solve, it has to be set equal to 0. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I guess we're done.